You'll never be one of us. Lena, Patricia said, tilting her wine glass with that trademark sneer. That's fine, Lena replied calmly, slipping the folder onto the table. Because I'm about to own the company you all depend on. The dining room fell silent. Her husband's parents paled. Her brother-in-law's fork clinked against his plate. And for the first time since her wedding, Lena smiled. The dining room was dressed in quiet arrogance. Mahogany table, crystal stemware, a chandelier that looked like it had been imported from a French palace. And seated around it, the Hawthorne family perfectly poised like statues in a museum of old money. Lena Ortiz Hawthorne didn't belong here, and everyone made sure she felt it. She sat beside her husband Andrew, a tall and kind-eyed man whose warmth was often the only shelter she had during these family gatherings. His hand brushed hers under the table, a silent reassurance. But even that wasn't enough to muffle the judgment in the room. Across from her sat Patricia Hawthorne, his mother the queen bee of this buzzing nest. She sipped her wine slowly and stared at Lena with the smile of someone preparing to draw blood with silk gloves. So Patricia said sweetly, "Lena, I hear your mother was what was it? Waitress?" Lena smiled politely. "She managed a diner in San Antonio. Owned it by the time I turned 15. "Impressive," said Patricia, her voice syrupy with condescension. "It's wonderful how far grit and charm can take someone these days." A few chuckles drifted around the table. Lena glanced at Andrew. He looked down. Then came the final straw. Patricia dabbed her mouth with a linen napkin and said, "Of course, Andrew could have married anyone. The girls from Dartmouth are all so accomplished. But love is unpredictable, isn't it?" Lena folded her hands in her lap. "Yes. Sometimes people fall in love with someone who sees the world outside the country club." The room fell into a hush. Andrew coughed lightly, trying to change the subject. "Dad, how's the quarterly looking at Hawthorne Ventures?" But Patricia wasn't done. "I suppose it must be hard, Lena," she said, "marrying into a legacy like this. I hope you don't feel inferior." Lena stared at her. Her voice was calm when she replied, "I've never felt inferior, just underestimated." That silenced the room. Later that night, back in their penthouse apartment, Andrew was quiet. Lena poured herself a glass of red wine and stood by the window. Below, the lights of Chicago blinked like Morse code. She could still hear Patricia's words echoing in her head. "I'm sorry," Andrew finally said. She was out of line. "She always is," Lena said. "And you always stay quiet." He flinched. "What do you want me to do? Start a war with my family? I want you to stand up for me." He rubbed his face. "You know I love you, right?" "I know, but love without defense is just decoration." Lena didn't sleep much that night. Instead, she opened her laptop and began researching Hawthorne Ventures. She'd always known they were big, an old logistics company that had pivoted into real estate and investment, but she'd never looked closely. Now she did. She traced board members' voting shares acquisitions. She read SEC filings like bedtime stories. And then she found it. A weak point. One of the subsidiaries, Halberton Freight, where her father-in-law and brother-in-law both worked, was quietly bleeding money. Their leadership had failed to modernize, and 2 private equity firms had been sniffing around looking for a buyout. Lena leaned back and sipped her wine. She didn't need revenge. She needed leverage. And maybe she was going to take it. The neighborhood where Lena grew up in San Antonio smelled like tortillas rain on concrete and oil from the nearby auto shop. It wasn't glamorous, but it had heart, and it made her. Raised by her mother, Marisol Ortiz, a Mexican-American woman with a fierce work ethic and sharper tongue, Lena learned 2 things early: how to survive and how to calculate risk. Her mother's diner, La Estrella, wasn't just a restaurant. It was homeschool sanctuary. Lena did her homework at the back counter between refills. She ran the register by 11, learned to negotiate with suppliers by 13, and managed the books better than most accountants by 15. She didn't have luxuries, but she had tools, and she used them. She earned a full scholarship to UT Austin, majored in finance, then interned in New York at a hedge fund where no one looked like her, and still she outperformed every Ivy League recruit. When she moved to Chicago, it was for a fintech startup run by a brilliant woman named Erica Lena, started as a junior analyst and rose quickly. By 27, she was COO. The startup exited for $160 million. Lena walked away with enough equity to never work again, but that was never the plan. She didn't want luxury, she wanted control. And then she met Andrew. They met at a leadership gala hosted by the city. He was speaking on a panel about legacy investing. She was moderating a breakout session on disruptive equity. They clashed immediately on philosophy, on policy, on tone. But when the event ended, he found her near the coat check. "I'm Andrew Hawthorne," he said, smiling. "I'd like to argue with you again sometime." She raised an eyebrow, flirting through debate bold. He shrugged. "It's the only way I know." Andrew was unlike anyone she'd met. Yes, he came from money, but he didn't wear it like armor. He listened. He laughed at himself. He made her feel seen, not sized up. Still, when he introduced her to his family for the first time, she knew. She saw it in Patricia's glance. The way Douglas Hawthorne, his father, asked about her papers, assuming she wasn't born in the U.S. She endured it for Andrew. And for a while, that was enough. Until it wasn't. Until every family function became a test. Until Patricia referred to her as spirited with that sharp smile. Until she overheard Andrew's sister whispering, "She's lucky she landed Andrew. No way she would have met someone like him otherwise." Luck. That word clung to her skin like grease. They saw her success as an accident. They didn't understand it was a calculation. Back in present-day Chicago, Lena sat at a quiet cafe with her iPad open and a cappuccino cooling beside her. She was tracing Halberton Freight's internal structure, its tangled mess of old contracts, its bloated executive pay scale, its tech debt. The company was a gold mine waiting to be modernized, or a ticking bomb waiting to collapse. And Andrew's brother Matthew was its COO. Lena smirked. Sometimes fate didn't need nudging. It simply needed documenting. It started with a whisper. A VC friend Lena had known for years forwarded her a screenshot of an anonymous tip sent to his inbox. It was a clumsy attempt to discredit her claims that she'd fabricated her COO credentials, doctored her degree, manipulated startup exits. "She's a liar," the email read. "Ask her ex-colleagues." The address was fake, but the tone was familiar. Lena scrolled through her messages in silence. It wasn't the first time. She had heard rumblings in boardrooms, cold shoulders from investors she'd once called mentors. And she could trace it back to one shift after her marriage to Andrew. She called Erica that night, her old boss, now a respected venture capitalist. "You know I'm getting smeared, right?" Lena asked. Erica sighed. "I figured. I've already dismissed it. But not everyone will." "Do you think it's them?" "Doesn't matter what I think," Erica said. "What matters is, they see you as a threat. Not because you're a fraud, but because you're better than they ever expected." Lena closed her eyes. She'd tried so hard to rise the right way. Merit, work, proof. But in the Hawthorne world, merit was meaningless unless it came wrapped in pedigree. 1 week later, Lena attended a private fundraiser with Andrew. Political figures, investors, board members, most of them old white men with golf tans. As Andrew stepped away to greet someone, Lena overheard a snatch of conversation near the open bar. "She's just not Hawthorne material. Matthew says she's always looking for angles. I give it a year before she's divorced and looking for a payout." Lena turned. 3 men, all in gray suits, sipping bourbon and not realizing she was 2 feet away. She didn't confront them. She simply took a mental note of their names and added them to the folder she was building. A digital folder titled Receipts. Later that night, back at the penthouse, Lena confronted Andrew. "Your family's feeding rumors to the press." He looked stunned. "What?" "They're spreading lies. Your brother, maybe even your mother. They're trying to discredit me professionally." Andrew looked away. "I'm sure they wouldn't." "Don't defend them." "I'm not. They wouldn't sabotage your career." "They already are." A silence stretched between them. You need to decide, Andrew, she said softly. Are you my partner, or theirs? For the next few days, Andrew was distant. Lena didn't press. She had more pressing matters. Halberton Freight's annual meeting was in 2 months. Their share price had dipped again. She reached out quietly to 2 mid-sized investors who were looking to exit. She disguised her firm's involvement under a shell group registered in Delaware. Within 10 days, she held 3.2% of Halberton's voting stock. Small, but enough to get on the radar. She started attending their quarterly calls silently, listening, learning, watching who spoke, who dodged questions, who repeated jargon to mask incompetence. She took notes, because Lena wasn't here to hurt them. She was here to take what they thought she'd never deserve. Control. Lena sat on the edge of the rooftop terrace of a quiet Fulton Market wine bar. The sky stretched purple above the skyline, and the city buzzed far below, unaware that something was shifting. That night, she wasn't Lena Ortiz Hawthorne. She was just Lena, and she had a decision to make. Back in the apartment, she sat in the dark laptop, open spreadsheets lighting her face. Each row told a story: capital outflows, mismanaged vendor accounts, high executive compensation, poor margin on logistics operations. Halberton Freight wasn't just vulnerable, it was ripe. She cross-referenced their capital structure with SEC public filings. 4 of their early investors had retained silent shares through secondary stakes. One of them, an elderly firm in Connecticut, had recently shifted assets. She tracked it like a bloodhound. Then she saw it. An opportunity. If she moved quickly, she could buy 5% more through this firm's blind trust still, without exposing herself. That would bring her to 8.2%. It was still under the radar. But Lena didn't plan to stay invisible for long. That weekend, Andrew was invited to a family brunch at the family estate. Lena declined. You're not coming? He asked, surprised. I have things to handle. He raised a brow. You always have things to handle lately. She looked at him. Do you know what it's like to walk into a room and have people smile at you like they're sharpening knives behind their teeth? He didn't answer. She kissed his cheek. Tell your mother I said hello. He left. She closed the door, then opened her laptop. By Monday, she had meetings scheduled with 2 former Halberton execs people who had been quietly pushed out under Matthew's leadership. She brought them coffee, asked questions, and listened. They confirmed what she suspected. The company was held together by nostalgia and nepotism. No innovation pipeline, no cloud migration, no operation strategy. It was a dinosaur in a Tesla world. And Matthew? He was arrogant, lazy, and addicted to status. But he wasn't stupid. He'd suspect something soon. Lena needed to accelerate. That night, she had dinner with her friend and former CTO Jordan Lynn. I need a shell structure that branches through 3 tiers, private but compliant. Jordan raised an eyebrow. You're not doing anything illegal, are you? Not even close, Lena said. But I need to stay untouchable. For now. He nodded slowly. I've got a contact in Zurich. I'm listening. The next day, Andrew came home early. He stood in the doorway watching her type. You've changed. She looked up. Have I? You don't talk to me anymore. I tried. You didn't listen. A pause. What are you doing, Lena? She closed the laptop, taking back my name. He looked confused. But she didn't explain. She'd spent years shrinking herself for this family, smiling, nodding, enduring. Now she was expanding, and there was no going back. By late spring, Lena Ortiz Hawthorne was no longer just watching Halberton Freight. She was quietly building an empire around it. She now owned 12.6% of the company, all through holding structures so complex even a seasoned investigator would need months to untangle them. Each transaction legal, each investment calculated, and all of it executed with surgical precision. She called it the long game, and she was winning. It began with her quiet acquisition of 3 smaller voting blocks, 2 via a real estate shell corporation, and 1 through an independent equity fund she had seeded the year prior. No one traced them back to her, not even Matthew. Yet, the company's board assumed these were opportunistic hedge funds circling a struggling logistics firm. They weren't entirely wrong. But they were completely blind to who was really pulling the strings. Jordan Lynn had built Lena's control stack like a fortress. 3 layers of privacy, multiple legal teams, quarterly reports that disclosed just enough to pass scrutiny. "Your 3 moves from checkmate," Jordan said one evening over ramen in a quiet corner of Wicker Park. "I know," Lena replied, staring at the stock ticker on her phone. "But the final play has to be loud." "Why?" "Because they've been whispering about me for years," she said. "I want the truth to roar." Lena's next target was a family-owned shareholder, one of the original investors from Hawthorne Ventures' first expansion into freight. Their granddaughter, a sharp 20-something MBA grad, had been trying to divest. Lena arranged a quiet lunch through her lawyer. No names, no titles, just mutual benefit. An agreement was signed in a small corner booth of a hotel restaurant. No press, no photos. That single signature brought Lena's total stake to 19.4%. That made her the largest single stakeholder. Still, no one knew. Then she made her first public move. Using a shell company, she filed a shareholder proposal requesting a review of Halberton Freight's executive compensation structure. The board panicked. Press inquiries trickled in. Rumors of activist investors gained traction. Matthew was furious. He called an emergency internal meeting. "This is sabotage," he barked to the room. "Some outsider thinks they can bully this company into change." Lena, watching via a leaked Zoom link sent to her by a quiet ally, smiled. She wasn't bullying anyone. She was just preparing them for a change in ownership. At home, Andrew noticed her glow. "You've been different," he said, pouring wine. "Confident. Almost radiant." She looked at him. "Would it bother you if I did something big? Something they couldn't ignore?" He paused. "Like what?" "Like change the game." Andrew didn't ask further. He was learning. Too late, perhaps, but learning nonetheless. It happened sooner than she thought. Andrew found out. He came home early from a lunch with Matthew, his face tight, jaw clenched. "You've been buying into Halberton Freight?" he asked flatly. Lena didn't deny it. She closed her laptop and met his eyes. "Yes." His breath caught. "You're behind the shell companies, the restructuring proposal, all the board drama." "I am." "You're trying to destroy my family." "No, Andrew," she said, her voice calm. "I'm trying to protect myself from a family that never saw me as worthy. I gave them grace. They gave me war." He sat down heavily. "You went behind my back. I went behind their backs. Yours too, because you never stood in front of me." Silence. "You should have told me," he finally said. "And you should have told them to stop humiliating me." He rubbed his face, suddenly tired. "This is going to blow up everything." She stepped closer. "Maybe it needs to." They didn't speak for 3 days. Andrew stayed in the guest room. Lena worked. She finalized the transfer of an additional 2.7% stake, bringing her total to 22.1%, a controlling interest if she swayed even one board member to her side. She wasn't going to wait anymore. An emergency board meeting was called. The email came on a Thursday night. Lena, as the majority stakeholder under her holding company's name, had requested a vote on executive restructuring and leadership accountability. Matthew was livid. Patricia reportedly had a panic attack. Lena prepared her presentation with the precision of a surgeon. The meeting took place in a glass-walled conference room at Halberton's downtown headquarters. Lena wore a tailored charcoal suit and carried a thin leather folder. No one knew she was the owner until she walked in and took the head seat. Gasps echoed. Matthew stood up red-faced. "What the hell is this?" Lena smiled. "Good morning. I'm Lena Ortiz, majority stakeholder in Halberton Freight, and today we're going to discuss the future of this company without nepotism, without dysfunction, and without apology." The room fell silent. Then the real work began. The Halberton boardroom was built to intimidate: thick glass walls, 12 leather seats, and a table long enough to fit egos the size of skyscrapers. That morning, the table felt smaller. Lena stood at its head, no longer an outsider, no longer a wife. She was a force. Across from her sat the faces that had once mocked her, dismissed her, whispered about her. Now they were listening. Patricia sat on the far right, red-lipped but pale, visibly shaken. Douglas Hawthorne, retired but present as an advisor, shifted uncomfortably. Matthew looked ready to explode. And Andrew, he wasn't there. He hadn't shown up. Good, Lena thought. He wasn't ready. Let's begin, Lena said, placing a neat folder on the table. This is a motion to dissolve the current executive leadership team at Halberton Freight, effective immediately pending board vote. Matthew slammed his palm on the table. This is a hostile takeover. No, Lena replied smoothly. This is a corporate realignment, and I have the votes. A hush fell. Board members glanced at one another. Over the past weeks, Lena had quietly reached out to the 3 non-family members on the board, career executives who'd grown tired of nepotism, incompetence, and being overshadowed. She'd offered them the one thing they craved: stability and performance-based leadership. They were with her. Patricia tried to speak. This company is our family legacy, which you've used to promote mediocrity, Lena said, voice firm. You've treated this business like a social club, not a company. That ends now. Matthew stood. I've led this company for a decade. Into decline, Lena cut in. Your leadership has cost Halberton over $120 million in lost market share. You've failed to adapt. You've failed to innovate. And you've failed your employees. A vote was called. 8 in favor, 4 against. Matthew, Patricia, and 2 long loyal allies voted no. But it wasn't enough. The room was silent as the results sank in. Matthew left the room without a word. Patricia stared at Lena, eyes glassy. You think this makes you better than us? No, Lena said, gathering her papers. I know it makes me better for this company. The news broke the next morning. Latina entrepreneur shakes legacy corporation with stunning leadership coup. The headlines flooded in. Financial media covered it with awe. Business influencers called it a case study in strategic brilliance. And for once, Lena's name wasn't attached to Andrew's. She was no longer a footnote in a Hawthorne legacy. She was rewriting it. 3 weeks after the boardroom coup, Lena took her place as interim CEO of Halberton Freight. She didn't waste time. The first step was an executive audit. Every department head was required to submit performance reviews, efficiency metrics, and future roadmaps. Those who responded defensively were flagged. Those who responded honestly were promoted. The message was clear: this wasn't personal. It was performance. Lena transformed the culture with deliberate moves. She eliminated the private executive lounge. She replaced quarterly executive retreats with town halls across regional hubs. She gave mid-level managers budgetary autonomy under the condition they met monthly growth metrics. And she introduced a radical idea: employee equity. Matthew's allies called it naive. Lena called it ownership. Morale spiked. Productivity rose. And Wall Street noticed. Halberton's share price climbed for the first time in 18 months. Industry magazines ran features: how a disrespected outsider became the savior of a sinking giant. Lena didn't celebrate. She worked. One afternoon, she stood in the break room of Halberton's Southern Logistics Hub in Dallas, talking to a group of warehouse supervisors. No one's ever flown out just to ask us what we need, said one of them, stunned. That's the problem, Lena said. I want to fix it. A woman in her 50s stepped forward, eyes misting. My son's in college because of the overtime this job gave me, she said. You're the first boss who ever asked me if I felt safe here. Lena nodded. We're going to make sure you stay safe. And paid. Meanwhile, Patricia disappeared from public life. Andrew sent occasional texts, short, restrained. Congrats on Q2 numbers. Saw the article in Forbes. She responded politely. But their conversations had the cold tone of 2 people who once loved each other but had chosen different maps. One night, Lena sat alone in her office, lights-dimmed city humming outside. She opened a handwritten letter from a former Halberton janitor. It read, They said someone like you couldn't lead us, but you made me proud to wear the uniform again. Thank you. She folded the note and placed it in a drawer. This was what mattered, not revenge. Legacy. It was a gray Tuesday afternoon when Andrew appeared in Lena's office unannounced. He stood in the doorway, still in his suit, hair damp from the drizzle outside. His eyes scanned the space-sleek, modern minimal. Hers. Lena looked up from her desk. Did you come for business or closure? He gave a faint smile. Maybe both. She gestured to the chair across from her. He sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Andrew broke the silence. I watched your town hall livestream yesterday. The way you spoke to the Dallas team, it was impressive. They deserve to be seen, Lena said. He nodded. You've done something remarkable. You turned this place around in months. She closed her laptop. And you came to tell me that, no, he admitted. I came to say I'm sorry. Lena tilted her head. I should have stood by you, he said. When my family treated you like dirt, when they undermined you, disrespected you, I stayed silent. I thought it would pass. It never passes unless someone stops it, Lena replied. I know, he said softly. I chose comfort over courage. She watched him for a long moment. What do you want now? She asked. He looked down. I don't know. Maybe to understand who we are now, if we're still anything at all. Lena leaned back in her chair. We're two people who loved each other once. Maybe still do. But we're on different timelines now. Can that change? She didn't answer, because she didn't know. In the weeks that followed, Andrew started showing up at company events, at nonprofit dinners. Lena sponsored even at her public Q&A sessions. He never pushed. He just listened. And when people asked who he was, he always said, her husband. Or at least trying to be again. Lena wasn't sure what to make of it, but she didn't shut the door. Then came the call. One of Patricia's closest allies had leaked internal documents to a tabloid, hoping to trigger a scandal about Lena's rise. But it backfired. The documents proved Lena's every move had been legal, strategic, and most importantly, ethical. Public support surged. Lena held a press conference. She didn't mention the betrayal. She simply said, truth doesn't need defense when it's documented. That quote trended for days. Later that evening, as she walked out of Halberton HQ, Andrew was waiting by the curb. He didn't speak. He just opened the car door for her. She hesitated, then stepped inside. For once, she didn't know where the road would lead. And that was okay. 6 months had passed since Lena took over Halberton Freight. In that time, profits surged. Partnerships were rebuilt. New tech infrastructure transformed operations. And Lena's leadership, once seen as an anomaly, was now a gold standard. But Lena wasn't chasing applause. She was building legacy. It was a crisp autumn morning when Lena stepped onto the stage of Chicago's Women in Business Summit. Her keynote address was being live-streamed to over 300,000 viewers. She wore a dark navy suit, heels sharp as her voice. Power, she said, isn't what you're handed. It's what you reclaim. She spoke about equity, resilience, and rebuilding broken systems. She didn't name names, but everyone knew. At the end of her talk, she received a standing ovation. In the front row, Andrew stood and clapped. She met his eyes. He smiled. But still, she walked off stage alone. Later that day, Lena received an invitation from Harvard Business School. They wanted to make her rise into a case study. Her name, once whispered as an outlier, would now be printed in textbooks. She smiled, but declined. There was more to do. At Halberton HQ, Lena sat in her new corner office. A photo of her mother, Marisol, sat on the shelf beside a framed blueprint of the Dallas warehouse redesign. A hand-drawn note from a forklift operator's daughter saying, "Thank you for helping my mom," hung above her desk. This was her legacy, not the corporate empire, the people, the dignity, the rebuilding. Andrew stopped by that evening. He knocked on the glass wall. Lena waved him in. He looked around. It's strange. I remember sitting at this desk with my father when I was a boy. Does it feel different? He nodded. It feels right. They sat in silence. Then he said, I sold my shares. I'm moving on. She blinked. Why? Because I don't want to live in a legacy I didn't earn. I want to build something on my own. Like you. She smiled. That's the smartest thing you've ever said. He chuckled. Do I get dinner for that? Maybe, she said, rising. If you let me pick the place. They left together. No promises. Just possibility. Weeks later, Lena stood before a plot of land outside Austin. A sign read, future site of the Ortiz Hawthorne Business Institute, a nonprofit learning center for first-gen entrepreneurs. A reporter asked, "Why here?" Lena looked at the dusty ground and replied, "Because this is where I learned to fight for myself." She paused. "And now I want others to know they never have to ask permission to lead." The sun was setting. Lena stood tall, and the world for once stood with her.